Hey, Mimi.
Hi, Dean.
Um, Tell folks a little bit about you.
My name is Mimi Carter. I have lived in Washington, D.C. for my entire life, but am now in Seattle, Washington. I've been in marketing and communications for 25 years. I
Mm,
started in politics like everybody else as an intern in the White House, which then led to a political appointment, which then led to going back to school because I realized I couldn't have much impact as a 22-year-old political appointee.
right.
And I got into communications and started in nonprofit, went to agency, and then was in corporate. So I've had this really nice um, career experiencing each level: politics, nonprofit, and corporate. And am now the vice president of marketing and sales at Chihuly Studios in Seattle, Washington.
Congratulations. So you're
Thank you.
moving the other Washington.
I am.
Wow. Wow. One side of the country to the other. That's a big change.
Exactly. And we're
Um,
filming this during election season. So
yeah.
it's definitely not a bad time to be out of DC.
No, that's for sure. I live in North Carolina, which occasionally is a battleground state, and oh my God, the ads.
Oh,
It's crazy.
yeah. They're
Okay.
spending
All right.
some real money.
Yeah. So I mean, even just globally and certainly in America, the economy has been all over the place for the last 3 or 4 years. Right. What shifts in sort of marketing priorities or even strategies do you see companies looking at or trying to make as we sort of move into 2025?
Right. I think there's a bigger investment in technology
Mhm.
and AI in marketing, and really less investment in staff and people and experience. And so leaders are really having to make that adjustment in not only training their staff on these new technologies, but also upskilling their junior staff because we're not investing as much in people as we used to be. We're wanting more for less. So that's what I'm seeing. What about you?
Um, well, I'm uh, in my case, because there are essentially two kinds of copywriters, right? I
Yeah.
used to be a software developer for a long time. The joke in software development is there's two kinds of people: the ones who think you can divide things into two, and the ones who don't. And in copywriting, there are, just like in salespeople, really, there are farmers and hunters. And it's a different psychology and a different skill set, right? And the farmer copywriters are the ones who they tend to be all new copywriters. Usually do farming, and most copywriters 90+%, and they write the blog posts. They do content marketing, right? They do that sort of, somebody found their way to the company or the website or the blog, or an algorithm fed up something on social media, and like that's sort of their entree into the company. And then the others, the hunters, are the ones where, I mean, to put it bluntly, we write the stuff that a company deliberately puts in front of a stranger,
Right.
whether that's a sign or an email or an ad or a new homepage or a landing page that you're driving traffic to, or a video script, like, so this sort of, the it's my job to get someone interested and pull them into the client's world.
Right.
Whereas the farmer copywriters look at what's currently trending or interesting to those people and write about it.
Right.
You need
Right.
both kinds.
You
God bless
definitely
them,
need
right?
both kinds.
Yeah,
And your kind is also, I think, where companies are starting to invest in because they want new ideas around
yeah,
engagement. What?
yeah. It's been a good time for me, right? If you're the kind of copywriter who likes having your stuff measured and
uh,
proven, it's a lot of people don't like their work to be measured,
yes, that's
but
true.
I do, and so it's
Yeah,
been
you
great.
do.
And the
Yeah.
explosion of fractional CMOs means that a lot more companies are hiring a lot more fractional people, for budgeting reasons, and they're very focused on the outbound. They're very focused on, you know, getting in front and sparking some stranger's interest as opposed to waiting for content marketing. Works, it absolutely works, but it's a long game. It's not a short game.
It's definitely a long game and
Mhm.
requires a good bit of research that, again,
Yeah,
a lot of and time that sometimes leadership doesn't want to invest in.
yeah. So good for me.
Yeah.
So given that, because you have a broader view of marketing and what companies are than I do, I'm very focused on messaging and
Yeah.
positions. Like with the tighter budgets, what seems to be delivering better ROI for companies these days? Do you think?
Well, what continues obviously to perform is video. every time, whether it's, social media posts or it's content on your website, or it really doesn't matter. So I think where we are starting to see some investment is in creative and in the writing around the creative, and then the engagement strategy around that creative. So
Right.
in those three buckets. Um, and I think that's where you come into play too. How do we marry what we're doing in our video content to make sure it's married to the messaging, for example, Dean is providing? And so we don't look schizophrenic, but we instead
Yeah.
look, it's, which we've seen a lot of too. So, and instead we look on message and tight.
Yeah. I have to admit that by the time this episode airs, this clips of this podcast will have generated at least 500,000 views
Wow.
in like a year and a half, which for me is just mind blowing that, anyone was, this is a very niche topic, right? Fractional
It's pretty
CMOs
niche.
tends to be about, it's a very niche topic. I mean, it's a niche within a niche within a niche,
Yeah.
right? And yet it's all video and it's all clips and it drives a lot of views. Yeah.
Well, people have a hunger to learn. And
Yeah.
again, when we look at where companies are investing, a lot of them aren't necessarily investing in professional development as much as staff would like.
Right.
And so these are ways that people can upscale inexpensively and quickly
Hmm.
through all your TikTok clips, etc.
Yeah. 500,000 views. Like,
That's
who's watching
crazy,
this?
Dean.
Right?
That's amazing.
Oh, and you get different. In case anyone's thinking about like their messaging, that'll be 500,000 views across three main platforms. We're on 7 platforms, but the three main are TikTok at about 55%, LinkedIn's usually in the low to mid 30%, and then
Hmm.
YouTube Shorts is somewhere between the high single to low double digits. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, and you look at the analytics across the three, you get sort of a view of who's watching. The
Great.
single largest, the age range is the largest audience is 34 to 49, 35 to
Which
49.
makes perfect sense. Those are the
Yeah,
managers that want to move up into
right.
AVPs and VP. So it
And
makes perfect sense.
and then the largest single group, they're not the majority, but and we know this from LinkedIn because LinkedIn knows what everyone's job is, right? The single largest group block of viewers are people who manage sales teams or are in charge of sales.
Okay.
You wouldn't
Again,
you would again, right?
yeah, it makes perfect sense. And sales
Yeah.
teams, that's a whole other, you know, bucket than just marketing, right? And how those two really work together, and sometimes how they don't work together. It can be a real conundrum.
Yeah. Oh well. Um, uh, there have the let's talk about marketing and the people in marketing. For the last
Sure.
several years, there was a period where there was almost like a short or tight labor supply
Yep.
across for most types of jobs and marketing included. Now, if you're a company that's looking to hire like a fractional CMO or a full-time CMO, like there's a lot of supply.
Right.
There are a lot of people on the bench that are looking for something, and
Yes.
that presents its own kind of problem,
Correct.
right? If you're the company, like how does a company find a great CMO these days?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I think it's uh, I do think it's old-fashioned referral.
Right.
Who's done great work for you before, or who's done great work for a company that you admire their work. So that's, I think, word of mouth in terms of hiring a fractional CMO is bar none one of the leaders. Second is the marketing CMO, sorry, is the fractional CMO really coming to the table with measurable deliverables that are time
Right.
bound? I mean, and then asking the questions of the CEO that are really specific. I think too often the CEO knows the problem and that doesn't necessarily want to get into the weeds of the solution. And yet that ongoing collaboration, that back and forth with the CEO on what's performing, what's not, what are the gaps, what do we need to address, where do we need to invest, that stream is super important.
I saw someone explain it, and two quick stories. One, I talked to Alan Gonsenhauser, who's He used to work at Forrester, and he's just like there are at least 130, 140 CMOs right now in America that were personally mentored by Alan,
Oh,
and he's
wow.
been a CMO like 10, 11 times, right?
Wow.
And I said I was curious because about a quarter of my business comes from ad agencies. I'm usually
Mm.
brought in to help them with the pitch stage. They want to figure out an angle, some headline that's going to resonate, short form stuff. And I said, Alan, how do when you like go in and start with a new company, an employer or a client, how do you find an agency? Like, how do you find the agency that you end up with? He says, usually I ask around, it's referrals.
Right.
And I said, so it hasn't changed in 100 years. He says, not really. No, it's pretty much the same as it's always been.
That's the
And,
same.
and someone else explained it to me as far as, if you're a fractional CMO or, some kind of expert or specialist, it'll come down to one of three things. Uh, there are people who know you, or you're the one that they see the most, or you're the only one they know of.
Mm.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And of those three, uh, you know, uh, uh, by far the one is they know you or they know someone who knows you.
Right.
Uh,
Exactly.
yeah.
And knows
It
your
hasn't
worth.
changed.
Yeah, but this kind of tags back to what you were saying, 100 years ago, 20 years ago. Word of mouth is still so
Yeah.
critically important, but it's also why it's so important that I think companies really look at their mission, vision, and values so that their employees feel empowered to be those ambassadors for the company. I think when you start to sort of see that disconnect between mission, vision, and values, you see a disconnect with the employees, and then those employees are really not the ambassadors that you need them to be in order to
Nope.
go to next level. And that's super important.
All right. So let's talk about companies and their marketing generally. Okay.
Okay.
As you talk to various companies, what do companies overrate that you wish they wouldn't? Right. Like they want to do X, they think they have to be on this platform, they need to spend money on this. They want to talk about X. What's overrated right now?
I think tactics are overrated. Oh, I
Yeah,
mean, social media is not a strategy, right? It's a tactic. And so knowing the difference between those strategies and tactics is like the difference between lightning and the lightning bug, because otherwise you're really not going to have the results that you're expecting without the strategy behind it. And
yeah.
that's probably the most frustrating.
So they overrate tactics. And so, besides strategy, what do companies or your clients tend to underrate in marketing?
I
Like what's
think
way more important than they think it is?
writing, good writing.
Yeah.
I realize I'm your sales girl here today then, because really good writing is so critical. And too often we're having to like weed through this circuitous junk in order to get to the meat and the heart of a company and their message and what they do. And that's just tedious. And we're not really prioritizing good writing enough so that companies can reveal their competitive advantage and why what they do is so important.
All right. I have a couple more questions for you.
Okay, great.
Um, for you're sort of about to exit the fractional CMO world,
Yeah.
right? You're in it, but you're about to exit because you've got like an opportunity. But today, some
Yeah.
number of people are going to become brand new fractional CMOs,
Yes.
right? Finish this sentence for me. Fractional CMOs starting today are going to be surprised by what?
The staff they inherit and the skill sets that they need to upskill in order to achieve the results that the CEO is expecting.
What do you mean by that?
I too often I think a team needs to have very specific skills that they don't necessarily have. And then those skills actually have to come together to produce the result. And too often they're siloed and they're not coming together and they don't have the skills necessarily to push forward what needs to happen in an ecosystem of marketing. So you may have somebody who's writing content, but they're writing content for social media when they should be writing content for a newsletter. And
Right.
everyone's like, well, they write content. Why can't they just do the social media? Well, social media content and newsletter content are really different.
Very
Web
much so.
content, so it's all, and so that training needs to happen in order for the essentially for the souffle to actually rise and to produce results. And so CMOs are going to be surprised that they're going to have to look at their budget and really determine how they're going to upskill certain staff in order to achieve the results. And I'm really a big believer in upskilling over firing in order to um, achieve those results, because people in general want to learn and they want to be successful.
Right.
And too often there's just an environment which is not supporting them from a leadership perspective, from a culture perspective, or from a mission, vision, and values perspective.
All right. So you're talking to a brand new fractional CMO. Okay. They
Yeah.
started today, and they've been like a regular CMO full time for like 10 years. But they decided for whatever reason, they decided to on their own, or they were invited
Yeah.
not to return to work, whatever, right? However it worked is, you're looking at them and you're saying, look, most of your clients are not going to understand what.
Most of your clients are not going to understand that in order to achieve results, you're going to have to take a little bit of time to do the discovery and the research and the planning.
Mm,
They really want results quickly. And you're often pushed and pulled because they've hired you. They put down the money, they're ready to go, they want to see
yeah.
results. And that discovery, research, and planning, you know, you can do short term wins, but just remember for the long term wins, you're still going to need that discovery, research, and planning. The short term wins, maybe, you can kick a few things out, and you've got to have those in order to be successful with that CEO. But getting those long term wins are equally important. And that discovery, research, and planning is critical.
All right. And then last question before we will start winding down. Let's pretend that I'm the CEO at a company that's hiring a fractional CMO. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What is something that once that fractional CMO starts, what's something I need to stop doing? And what's something that I need to start doing now that I have a fractional CMO in the company?
I think what you have to start doing is really communicating with that CMO on what your measurable goals are. Like, what are you
Mhm.
trying to achieve? And too often that's really not clearly articulated. They know what the problem is, but they really don't know what the goal is. And so working with the CEO on defining that goal, what do we want to achieve, is super important.
What should they stop doing as CEO?
Micromanaging, getting in the
Yeah.
weeds,
Stop
telling,
thinking they're in charge of marketing.
yes, stop writing your own social media posts sometimes. Sometimes it's really, everybody loves the authentic, but sometimes it doesn't necessarily uh, bode well for the company.
Right. Okay, so you're moving into a new role, and so normally I would ask, like, who should be reaching out to you, thinking in terms of potential clients. But these days, as you become a full-time CMO again,
Uh-huh.
who should be reaching out to you, and what's the best way to connect with you?
The best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And people who should be reaching out to me are people in the architecture, design, uh, and art museum space.
Mm,
Dale Tripoli is an amazing artist with an amazing team. And the team creates really beautiful, inspiring, jaw-dropping work that inspires, whether it's the patients of the Buffett Cancer Center or the staff at Amazon. It inspires people to be creative and thoughtful and think out of the box. And so I really want to work with those companies on creating that inspiration. And then I really want to work with art museums so we can help them increase their foot traffic, their sponsorship, and their revenue.
all right, that sounds great. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for helping me complete episode 139.
I can't believe that. You must be so
I know.
pleased with yourself. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
But I'll probably finish the month with a full 150 episodes. It's crazy.
Well done. Well done.
Whew, boy. Okay. Thank you, Mimi.
Thanks, team.
Thanks everyone for watching, and see you.